Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Hunter Foltz with Red Leaf Pursuit Outdoors, and today we're going to be going through a whole arrow build process of my new arrows for 2020. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and if you're old, welcome back. Please hit the subscribe button as it really helps us out, and we're going to dive right in. So this year I'm going to be building the Black Eagle X Impacts in 300 spine and .001 straightness. There's a lot of good arrows out there on the market. As I was currently shooting, and I'm still shooting, the Easton Axis 5mm Pros in 300 spine. And those arrows really treated me well, but I wanted something a little bit lighter overall, grains per inch. Those are coming in pretty heavy, and these are 8.1. So what that's going to allow me to do is to put more point weight on to really boost my front and center weight and also lower my total arrow weight just a hair. So stay with us as I'm going to walk you through my complete build and tuning of these arrows. So the first thing we're going to do is cut these inserts. Now the inserts I'm using on my X Impacts are Ethics. They're insert-outsert system. So this is what they'll look like. And then they got different slits so you can cut it to make it different weights. So this one's adjustable from 135 grains to 75 grains. And then this will glue down in the shaft, and then you can throw this collar over it to really boost its integrity and strength. So this is what they'll look like when they're cut. I've already cut a couple of them off. That's what they'll look like when they're cut. So I'm going to show you the process of how I do that. So the first step that I do to cut these inserts is I'll take an old field point that I don't use anymore, and I'll just screw that in there because we're going to put it in a vise, and we don't want to put the insert in the vise and risk dinging up the metal or bending it. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this in here. My vise actually has a little bit of a slit cut out of it, so my inserts may look like they're in there, but they're actually not. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down as tight as I can get it. I've got an old vise here, so bear with me. It's not even bolted to the table. Then I'm going to take a hacksaw and I'm going to go down 3 slits because we want these to weigh 80 grains. So 1, 2, 3. Find my 3rd slit, and then I just saw away, and I put my finger. Don't put your finger in the way of the blade, but keep it away, and you're just there to support it so it doesn't move. And then you're just gonna continue sawing until you get almost all the way through. Once I get most of the way through, I'll just take a pair of needle nose pliers or a vice grip or something like that, and I'll put it on the back, and then I'll just bend this back piece off, and there you have your cut. Alright guys, so when you cut your inserts, they're not going to cut perfectly square. So I'm going to take a file, and I'm just going to file down the back end while I still have it in the vise. So this one doesn't have too bad of a lip, so it shouldn't take too much. This one actually cut off really close. So I'm just going to file that end down. And that looks pretty good like that. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up. Pull that out. Unscrew my field point here. Now, I'm going to see if it fits in the arrow, and it probably will not fit. See, it does not fit in there. So don't worry, that's not a problem. We're going to come back here and take the file, and we're going to just set it down, and we're just going to go along the edges of the back end of the insert to really flatten those little edges out. And then it should fit really nicely in the arrow. Back here, and it fits perfectly snug down in the arrow, flush, just like so. So now I'll come over here, I'm going to check it on my scale. It should weigh 80 grains. The other ones I've cut have been between 80 and 80.4, so 80.4. So what I'll do before I put the inserts in is I'll probably just take the file and file down the back edge of them until they all equal 80 to 80.2 because I want them between 0.2 grains. The next part that we're going to do is we're going to prepare these arrows to be cut. So I'm going to take each arrow individually and spin them. So I'll put them down here on my arrow spinner, and you're looking for which end has the most wobble to it. So as you can see, that side looks pretty good. Now that side's got some wobble to it, as you can see there. A slight wobble, slightly more than this knock side. So what that means is we're going to cut from the front on this arrow. So that we'll put in the front, and then I've already spun each one, but I just want to show you some of these. Okay, so you can see there, that knock's got quite a bit of wobble to it. So that's the side we're going to cut off on this particular arrow, because what we're going to do is cut off some of that wobble to make it a little bit straighter overall. So once we get that set, we'll switch the nocks around and cut off that wobble. See, a lot of pro shops will only cut from the front, but that's not always a good thing, because if the back's more wobble, you want to cut that wobble out of the arrow. It's going to make you more accurate, and believe it or not, the knock end is more important than the front end, because that's where your arrow touches the string. So do this before you cut your arrows, and you will definitely see a difference in accuracy. So the next thing we did is I put this whole bare shaft in my bow, and I drew it back to get where I wanted to cut. So I took the burger hole and I went to the front edge of the burger hole and I put a line there. So that is where I want it to sit, but I'm gonna run a collar over it. So when I put the insert, this is gonna slip over it. So I actually added a 1/2 inch to my original measurement to make sure that I had enough room for that collar. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and add just a hair more, because when I cut these and I make sure they're square, I'll take some off. So I'm gonna actually add about 1/8 of an inch to that measurement. So let me get my arrow saw set up and we'll cut these babies up. So we got our arrows measured, we got our 1/2 inch line marked, and I'm actually gonna cut just in front of that line, just because I can get away with being a little bit long, but I can't get away with being too short. So I got a T-Bird Archery modular saw here, and what you do is you just take the base with the knock end, the knock groove, and you adjust that until you get it perfect in here with the blade, and then you're all set to go. And then you don't only have to measure one arrow, because once you get it in here, the nocks are going to be in the same spot every time. So let's cut these arrows. Alright guys, we got the arrows cut. So most of the time the saws don't cut them perfectly square, so we got to square the ends of the arrows. So I moved the nocks back to the back on the ones that I cut off the back, and my arrow saw actually has a built-in squaring device. So you can see right here, there's actually a sand block right there, and when I turn the saw on, that sand block will spin, and all I gotta do is tap the arrow up against there twice and the arrow will be square. So we're gonna do that now. Once your arrows are squared, we're going to clean out the inside of the shaft, and because I'm using a collar, we're going to clean out the outer part of the shaft. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some denatured alcohol. I'm going to go ahead and spray it on. I got 6 Q-tips because I got 6 arrows total. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this on this end of the paper towel and that end of the Q-tips. I'm going to keep one end dry though. So now I'm just going to, as you can see, you get a lot of black grime out of the end of that. So we're going to go to the next arrow. Make sure you keep track of which ones. These Q-tips are really hard to get in. These arrows are small diameter. You get a lot of residue out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my last arrow at the inside of it. Pull that out. So now that the inside of the arrow is cleaned, we also have to go ahead and do the outside of the shaft, only because we're going to be putting a collar on the end, and we're actually going to glue the collars on. You don't have to, but I like to glue them on just because I think it makes them stronger. So I'll go ahead and tap the arrows, tap those. So now I will take a paper towel here, I'll just spray it down, and then do the ends of the arrows here. There's not too much dirt on these here. Alright guys, now that everything's squared up and ready to go and clean, we're going to take a wire brush and we're just going to run this through the end of the shaft where the inserts are going to be. And run it right back out. I had to use a pair of pliers because the wire brush was hurting my hands. So that'll just rough up the inside and allow for the glue to hold just a little bit better. Do that. So that's done. And then I'll actually take a little strip of sandpaper here, and since I'm going to glue the outside of the shaft, I have glue on the outside for the collar, I'm just going to turn that in there and rough that up just a hair. And then they'll all be ready for inserts. Alright, so now we're weighing our arrows after they're cut right before we glue in the inserts. So 223.8. I've got 2 of them at 223.6 and 2 of them at 223.8. So 223.6 again. Last one. 223.8. So we're within 0.2 grains as we speak without inserts or anything. So now I'll weigh the inserts. So what we're doing now is we're going to weigh each insert and collar. So I got 105.4 for this one. So I'm going to categorize them off that number. So I'm going to weigh this next one. We get 105. So we got 105.4 and 105. Now I'm going to throw in another insert. And we got 105. So I'm going to match up these lighter ones with the heavier arrows, and then the slightly heavier ones with our lighter arrows, and then when we're all done, we should get a closer combined total weight. Alright guys, now we're going to glue in the inserts and collars. So I have had really good luck with the HIT insert glue by Easton. They worked well on my brass inserts and the collars and footers I put on my Axis arrows. I have not had one issue with either the footer or the brass insert popping out. So I'm going to use it on my Ethics. I like to use a glue that really takes a while to dry and cure, because I believe that the longer it takes to cure, the tougher that it's going to be. And this takes about 24 hours. So there's a 2-part epoxy here. I'm just squeezing it out of the pack here. And this is enough to do 12 arrows, but the reason I'm using a full pack for 6 is because I'm gluing in both the insert and the outsert collar, so it's going to be like a total of 12 arrows. So once you get it all out, as much as you can out of the pack, it's kind of hard to get out of there. So once you get it all out, I just take a little insert tool and you want to stir it up really good. And it's going to turn like a milky-ish brown color. And once it turns that color, it is mixed properly. So once the epoxy is this milky-ish, whitish, brown, ugly-looking color, I'll take my first insert here, and since I cut them down a little bit, I'm just gonna. There's glue grooves on glue grooves on the top of the inserts here, but I just like to put a little bit all the way down each side of the arrow here, or each side of the insert, because having too much isn't usually an issue. So then when I go to put these on, I'm going to kind of twist and pull out, twist and pull, and really get all that glue worked down in there. And I got a little bit too much there, so I can go ahead and wipe this off before I officially finish sticking it all the way in flush. So I'll stick it, I'll push down, make sure it's really in there, wipe off the excess there, make sure that's flush, guys. You want to make sure that it's super flush, and that looks pretty good. So now I'll do the same thing, but I'm going to make sure my collar's where it's going to slip to, so I can go ahead, and you can kind of see where the stain of where you just wiped off the excess glue, and that's like right where you want the collar to be glued at. So I'll go ahead and put some all up and down right on the edge of the carbon of the shaft. You don't need a whole lot for the collars. And then I'll take the collar, I'll push it on, and I'll do the same thing. I'll rotate up and down and twist, and then I have a little bit of excess, so I'll wipe that clean, and then I'll push on it some more. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'll give it one more push to make sure everything's flush in there. And then Ethics recommends that you actually take a field point and screw a field point in so it locks everything in there. Tighten that up really good. Push down on it one more time, and there you go. Your inserts are now glued in. Perfect. Guys, a thing I almost forgot as I had 3 arrows glued. Make sure you take the nocks out of the end of the arrow, because if you don't, the pressure in the shaft will build up and your inserts will actually slide back out. I'm super glad I remembered to do that. So don't forget that part, because that is crucial, or your arrows could be ruined. So the next step in our Black Eagle arrow build is going to be fletching the arrows and picking out our fletching combinations. So I've got 6 arrows total, and 5 of them are going to be fletched, and I'm going to leave this one like this. I got my lighted knock in, and then I picked out my weight of my vanes. I think I'm going to do a 3 vane configuration, so I put on electrical tape for the weight of 3 vanes. So when I bare shaft tune, I can use this arrow and it'll be the exact same weight of my fletched arrows. So I'll set that one aside, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to weigh each arrow here. I've got my 5 arrows. So, and then I have my notebook here so I can write down everything about them. So this one's weighing, make sure I'm not touching anything, 329. So arrow number 1 is going to be all the way to the left, and I'm going to have it at 329.0. Arrow number 2. Also, 329.2. 329.2 for arrow number 2. Jot that down. Now that'll be the next arrow from the left. Arrow number 3. .329.2. Arrow number 4. 329.4 for arrow number 4. Arrow number 5, 329.4. So all of our arrows are within 0.4 grains after they're cut, inserts, and everything installed. And those are obviously without your field point or lighted knock. Those are just standard. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to weigh out all my veins, and I'll show you how to do that next. So the next step is going to be weighing out our veins, each individual vein. So we're at a 0.4 grain difference between our heaviest and lightest arrow, which is really, really good. I'm happy with that. So now we're going to weigh out each vein, and then these will probably be 0.2 to 0.4 from each other. So it's going to allow us to get every arrow exact. So we're going to start weighing here. I've got columns because I know about what they weigh. So I got 5.6, 5.8, 6, and 6.2. So this one's 6 grains. So I'll put that in the 6 grain slot there. And I've got red and white. You want to make sure you weigh every one that you're going to use. And I've got more than what I'm going to use. .8. So you're just going to go through and weigh each and every vein. And I like to weigh more than what I'm going to use, so I have more of an option if I get stuck and I need a little bit heavier one or a little bit lighter one. I make sure I have enough. Alright guys, so I have all my fletchings weighed, and they're all categorized between 5.6 grains, 5.8, 6, and 6.2. We got them all laid out. I've got my bare shafts weighed, and we're ready to fletch. But I did want to mention that I am running tack driver, 2.75 inch veins, a little bit lower profile, but longer than what I ran before, which were blazers. And I'm still going to run a 3 fletch with them, because the overall surface area of the vein is still more than with a blazer. So I did not see a need for an extra fletch. So the first thing I do is I take a little denatured alcohol, and I actually put mine in a spray bottle. That seems to work a little bit better. And I'm just going to take it and rub the whole back end of the arrow down here, where the veins, and you can hear it whistle when it gets clean. And I'll just run the drier part of the paper towel, get it dry. Now, a tip that I can give you that I've recently done, and it seems to work, is when I'll take the knock, and each knock has, on the ends of it, I don't know if you can see, it has a little bit of a lip sticking out on one end. So I'll take that lip, and I'm going to line it up on the same way, so my knocks are all the exact same on each arrow. So I'm going to line that up with this label right here, the 300 and straightness label. Make sure it's almost perfect, and then I'm going to start. I have a Bitzenberger jig. I love my Bitzenberger. It's really simple to use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this arrow the same every time I put it in here. So just like that. Then I'm going to take my helical clamp. I'm fletching with a left helical for these arrows. And my first arrow weighs 329.0. Now, I got 2 arrows that weigh 329.2 and 2 arrows that weigh 329.4. So I'm going to go to the middle at those 0.2 arrows, and we're going to go for that total weight there. So with this one, I'm going to use two 5.8 veins and a 6.0 grain vein. So our total arrow weight will be the same, because I'm going to fletch the 329.2s with all 5.8 grain veins. So I'll show you how to set up the Bitzenberger. Alright guys, so I'm using my Bitzenberger Fletching jig. It's the one I like to use the most, and it's really simple to use. So I'll show you how I set it up. It's really simple to set up, and I've got it set on 3 fletch. So there's 3 set screws here, and 120 degrees, 90 degrees, and 75 by 105. So I screwed in the 120 degree and backed out the other 2, and that'll give me 3 clicks for 3 vanes at 120 degrees. Then if I would have wanted to do a 4 fletch, which I have before, I would just back that one out and then screw in the 90 degrees, and that would give me 4 fletchings at 90 degrees. So this year I'm going to run a helical, which I haven't done in the past. For some reason I have always just ran a straight fletch for whatever reason. So I've got a left helical clamp, and the reason I'm fletching with the left helical is because my bow spins a bare shaft to the left. So I don't want to put a right helical on because my bow will actually it'll be counterproductive, because the vane will want to spin right and my bow wants to spin it left. So you're going to get a weird flight out of that, so I'm going with the left, obviously. So with these tack vanes, you have to use their primer pen and glue to get the best possible bond, and I can assure you they will not come off. So I want to put some primer pen on there, blow on it just a little bit, and then use their glue. And then I just like to run a nice thin bead. You don't want to get too much or it'll start dripping out when it's on. So just a nice thin bead of glue. Try not to get any air pockets or air bubbles in there. So just kind of smooth it out. And then you want to make sure the back of this is all the way up against the back of the jig, and then you just press down with some force. And then I'll leave it sit there probably for 30 seconds to a minute. The longer the better. It'll probably be dry quicker than that. This glue dries really quick, but I'm gonna leave it sit there. Another tip when you're gluing your vanes is when you put them in the clamp. Here, I'll show you for an example here with my straight clamp. When you put them in the clamp, you don't want to push them all the way down against the metal of the clamp, because when you do that, especially with a helical clamp, you'll push down on it, and when the arrow's like this, you'll get the back, and then this part will actually hit the arrow and it'll not allow you to get the front of the vane even on the shaft. So what I'll do is I'll just back them out just a little bit, kind of like that, and then that'll give me the proper distance to make sure the whole vane is seated on the arrow. So I'll put a little more pressure on that, and I got a little bit, come over here, I got a little bit of glue coming out on the edge here, just a little bit. You can see the glue spots. So I'm just going to take a paper towel while it's in the, just rub against that and try to get some of the pool of glue. It's not much, just a little thin line. Just try to clean it up a little bit, and once I take this clamp off, I will go in and clean it up a little bit more around the edges. So now that I've gave my fletch almost a minute, maybe over a minute now, I'll just give it one more good press. And then taking this clamp off is very important. You have to open and then rotate. You don't want to pull. You got to open it and then rotate it back like that, so you don't mess up where the vane is sitting. So I'll just go ahead and rotate it till it snaps in, and you're ready to do your next fletch. So like I said earlier, this is the one that needs to have one different vane. So I'm going to do a white vane now, and this one is going to be a 6-grain vane, because I did a 5.8, this one's going to be a 6, and the next one is also going to be a 5.8. So I'll line this up with I know about how far my vanes need to be. I know how far my vane needs to be from my face, so I put a little mark on my clamp here. I actually got 2 marks. This one back here is for Lily, and then this one up here is for me. is you want it to be back as far as you can, but you don't want it to contact your face. So I like to, once I get one vein on, I'll go ahead and put the next one on and run a dry run is what I call it, without any glue, and make sure everything is lining up to be perfect, right where I want it. And that looks almost perfect. So again, I'll take my primer pen, run that on the back of it. Dry it off just a little bit. Take my bottle of glue, and a thin bead is all you need. Thin bead, all you need. It's kind of catchy. Just a nice and I'll take my glue bottle and smooth it out like that so I don't have any air pockets. Looks perfect. So I'll use the magnet and magnet it in, push it all the way against the back, and then push down with some force. So I got my vein in. We're going to go ahead and run the primer pen on my last vein for this first arrow. Make sure it's still putting out some liquid. You got that. I'm going to go ahead and let it dry. I'm going to do my dry run. Dry run. Make sure everything's seated perfect still. Looks good. Lines up good. Now time for the glue. Thin bead. If you get a little bit of excess, that's okay, but I don't like it because it kind of smushes out and doesn't look very good. It doesn't look nice and clean. So I got a nice thin bead there. Magnet it in, put it up against the back, push down. And I'll always give it some really firm pushing right out of the beginning. So my last vein is pretty much dry. It's been on for about a minute. So I'm gonna give it one more good firm press. Hold. Okay, now I'm gonna unclamp, rotate back, set my clamp off. My veins are now on and glued, and there's the finished product. So the last step I do to fletching each arrow is a thing called tipping and tailing. So I'm going to take I gotta get in the light here, just a little bit of glue. Just need barely any coming out of the end. And I'll put a little bit of dotted glue on each vein in the front, especially. Fronts are the most important, and I'll still put a little bit on the back to hold the ends down. Then you'll have your finished arrow vein configuration. And then what I'll do is I'll just wipe off some of the excess as I see need. Alright guys, so one of the last parts of your arrow build is getting them paper tuned. And my bow was already tuned before, so I knew it was going to be close, but I couldn't tune until I got my D loop adjusted. It was too narrow and I was getting some knock pinch because the G knocks are a little bit thicker than the X knocks. So here's where we started on our paper tune. I went ahead and shot with a fletched arrow, and we were getting a slight high left hair, so I adjusted it and I got it down to here. So then I switched over to my bear shaft and I still had a high left here, and then I made one more adjustment and shot my bear shaft, and we got a perfect bullet hole. So now it's time to take the bow out and get it sighted in, and then once we get it sighted in, we'll do a little bit of a walk back tune. Alright guys, our arrow build is complete. I got them tuned as you just saw, and I just took them out this afternoon and sighted them in and got my sight tape on. So here's our finished product. I got a nocturnal knock with the tack driver 2.75 inch vanes. I got the Ethics insert-outsert system, and I'm gonna run a Sever broadhead. Now I did end up going with a 3 fletch instead of the 4 like I was originally planning, because I just got better results with a 3 fletch on this particular arrow over my Axis, which I got better results with a 4. Now the specs of this arrow is it's about 27.5 inches long, and it's coming in at 454 grains with an 18% front of center weight. Now I love that I can have a mid-weight arrow and still get a good FOC percentage. I wanted to be over 14%, and I was really happy when I put this on and got 18%, because that is really good. I'm gonna have a lot of push power, and I'm still in that mid-weight range like I was talking about. I don't want to be up above 520 like I would have had to have with my Axes to get to that FOC percentage. Now I'm shooting about 290 feet per second with these, which is perfect. That's about what I want to be at. I can still get fixed blades to tune well, even though I'm going to shoot mechanicals for the most part during deer season. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you picked up a couple tips on building arrows. I enjoyed this process, and I'm really happy to get shooting these, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do to whitetail this fall. So I look forward to seeing you guys at the next video, and please subscribe, as it really helps us out.